I still remember the moment I found the small, dusty book in my grandfather's study. It was buried beneath a pile of worn-out National Geographic magazines and old tax documents in a cedar chest that hadn't been opened in decades. The cover was simple, leather-bound, no title. Inside were handwritten notes, translations, and interpretations of quotes by Pythagoras. I had never seen my grandfather, Richard Collins, as a philosophical man. To me, he was a retired mechanic with a fondness for hot coffee and old jazz vinyls. But the more I read those notes, the more I began to understand him, and the lessons that had shaped his life, many of which I, like so many others, was only beginning to understand far too late. My name is Marcus Collins, 44 years old, and I spent most of my life chasing success on society's terms. High income, flashy lifestyle, corporate prestige, but not meaning. Not peace, not truth. The quotes of Pythagoras, filtered through my grandfather's lens, hit me like a freight train. They weren't just clever sayings from a long-dead philosopher. They were maps I should have followed when I was 20, not 40. And now I want to share the story of how each of those ancient lessons found its way into my life. Sometimes painfully, sometimes slowly, but always with undeniable truth. The first quote that stood out to me was scribbled across a yellowing page. No man is free who cannot command himself. When I was younger, I equated freedom with having no rules. Doing what I wanted when I wanted. Parties, spending without care, impulsive relationships. But now, with 2 divorces behind me, a fractured relationship with my teenage daughter, and a bank account that no longer screamed success, I realize that the absence of discipline is not freedom. It's bondage dressed as liberty. It was only when I took control of my impulses, started waking up early, exercising, reading, saying no to toxic people and easy pleasure, that I felt genuinely free. Freedom wasn't about money, it was about self-mastery. Another quote haunted me for weeks. Do not talk a little on many subjects, but much on a few. My career in marketing rewarded me for being loud, quick, and wide-ranging. I was good at talking, but I was terrible at listening and even worse at depth. My relationships, romantic and platonic, often ended with people telling me, "You never really understood me." I didn't. I was skimming through life like I skimmed through articles. Never going deep. It wasn't until I started truly listening, truly caring about fewer people, fewer goals, fewer opinions, that my world began to make sense. Focus gave my life depth and color. Scatter made it blurry and gray. Then there was a quote that read almost like a whisper. Rest satisfied with doing well, and leave others to talk of you as they will. For too long, I let my life be dictated by the opinions of others. I stayed in jobs I hated because they looked impressive. I bought cars I couldn't afford because they made people envious. I dated women for appearance, not alignment. But none of that ever brought peace. It took losing almost everything, job, reputation, lifestyle, for me to realize that approval is a mirage. Doing good work, living truthfully, being kind, these are enough. I've learned to be content with knowing I'm doing well, even if the world isn't watching. There was one entry in my grandfather's handwriting that looked like it was written in a rush, as though the thought had overtaken him. Choose rather to be strong of soul than strong of body. In my early 30s, I was obsessed with fitness. Six-pack abs, meal preps, gym selfies. While my body looked great, my soul was starving. I never sat still. Never reflected. Never asked myself if I was okay. I feared stillness because I knew what would come bubbling up. But now, years later, I've embraced meditation, prayer, journaling. I've worked to strengthen my spirit as much as I once did my biceps. It's the inner strength that gets you through sleepless nights and heartbreak, not a toned physique. Pythagoras once said, "Educate the children and it won't be necessary to punish the men." That one struck me the hardest. My daughter, Emily, is 16 now. For too long I tried to correct her through control, curfews, lectures, monitoring. But I wasn't educating. I wasn't modeling wisdom. I was enforcing fear. It wasn't until I started talking to her, not as a warden but as a guide, that things changed. We're not perfect, but we're closer. I wish I had understood earlier that teaching values with love creates a foundation far stronger than threats and punishment. One of the final quotes I found scribbled beside a coffee stain said, "Do not chase after happiness, you will never catch it. Live with purpose, and happiness will come to you." This line reshaped everything. I chased happiness in vacations, promotions, and short-lived relationships. But like smoke, it always slipped through my fingers. Purpose, however, has roots. After quitting my corporate job, I began mentoring young men, many who reminded me of myself. I helped them avoid the same traps. For the first time in decades, I felt fulfilled. Not excited, not entertained, fulfilled. And that, I've come to learn, is what real happiness is made of. One rainy evening, I visited my grandfather's grave. I brought the old book with me. I sat under a nearby oak tree and read aloud to him, as if he could hear me. I told him how late I was to all of this, how foolish I'd been. But I also told him thank you. Because his notes, his thoughts, his love, had reached me when I needed it most, even if it was late. And here I am now, writing this down in hopes that maybe someone, somewhere, won't wait as long as I did. Maybe a man in his 20s will read this and course correct. Maybe someone in their 50s will realize it's not too late. Maybe someone grieving the loss of purpose will remember that it's never gone. It's just buried under noise and expectations. I now live simply. I drive a 10-year-old sedan. I rent a small house in Oregon. I work part-time at a library and spend most evenings reading, walking, or talking with my daughter. Some might say I lost everything. But in truth, I found what matters. I learned that wisdom doesn't arrive with age. It arrives with humility. And often, it's the voices of the past that help us hear the truth in the present. So if you're still reading, take this to heart. Don't let these quotes stay as ink on a page. Let them be the catalyst for your change. Let them guide your choices, even the small ones. Because the life you truly want isn't out there somewhere. It's waiting inside you, just beyond the noise, just beneath the surface. You don't have to learn them too late like I did.